Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, and we're going to talk about the retirement of Chief Justice, Supreme Court, SCOTUS, Supreme Court Justice, Stephen Breyer. All right, so there's a lot of Dungeons & Dragons juice here. Okay, so basically, you as a Dungeons & Dragons, so what I'm going to be talking about today is, I think this is isolated to Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Dungeon Master. So let's talk about it. It's not really applicable to players, and I'll tell you why. So you rule. So let's talk about Faerun, right? It's a great default. It's the reason why I talk about Faerun is I talk about Faerun because it is the default setting of Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition. Now, we do have Exandria and we do have Eberron. These are also have Ravnica and we have Theros. And these are all, and we also have Arcavios, the Strixhaven world, okay? And there is rulers on every single one of these worlds. So what I say about Faerun can easily slide over to Exandria, the Wildmount world, to Eberron, to Arcavios, which is the world that Strixhaven is on, and all those other worlds. But what you need to understand is no matter where as a Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Dungeon Master, no matter what setting you're using, right, you rule. You're the ruler. You are going to make the decisions for the rulers of those worlds, right? And because you're a Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Dungeon Master, you've been handed a responsibility, okay? So Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition is a truly special version of Dungeons & Dragons. Other editions, unlike other editions, okay, the edition you play is informed by every other edition, right? It's not just something where it came out at a particular time and you're literally playing a version that doesn't include lessons that were, so like let's say you're playing 2nd edition, right? You're playing a version that is uninformed by lessons learned in 3rd and 4th, right? But 5th edition is informed by every single version of Dungeons & Dragons, and because Wizards of the Coast has rights to all of those versions, they can take the best and they can take the meat and leave the bones, right? Whereas if you're playing an older version, you still got bones, right? Like and if there's fixes, those aren't in your edition, right? So 5th edition is saying, hey, we're meeting you at the top of the rules chain, right? Like this is the most informed, best rule set because it includes lessons from every other version. And trust and believe, there were powerful lessons learned, right? In addition to that, 5th edition, like Strixhaven, perfect example, right? They talk about identity, they talk about gender, they talk about preference in that, right? And they hit cultural points and questions that are like ripped straight from the headlines, right? And it upset a lot of people about Strixhaven. They're like, oh, page 80, like, oh, I'm upset, or and they got, just like one full page piece of art had people, probably 100 different, videos were made just about, hey, I don't like this picture, it makes me uncomfortable, right? But the reason that Strixhaven put it in is the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition team, it says this is an engine for simulating our world, right? So let's look at what's happening right now with Stephen Breyer, and then determine how that prompts changes in our Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Faerun. Okay, so Justice Stephen Breyer, I listened to ABC News, World News this morning, and they said Justice Stephen Breyer, that sources associated to him are reporting. He didn't say this, right? Major news sources, not small rinky-dink, major news sources are like, hey, Biden's going to be able to appoint a new a new SCOTUS, right? A new Supreme Court justice, right? And basically, but this didn't come from the source. So one of the things that you should realize about Faerun and Phandalin, okay, is that the player characters should often hear information way before the source announces it, right? And the reason why is they are connected to other powerful people. They're connected to guilds, they're connected to factions. They have the money to go to taverns where there are bards. Bards are very much the media of D&D 5th edition Faerun, right? And so it's highly likely. So one of the things you should realize about Faerun and Phandalin is that you want to so I know today that Biden is going to be able to put in a new SCOTUS, right? But the new SCOTUS did not announce that, right? And so just so you're aware, your player characters, because they're so important in the world, because they are, essentially, they're a hinge, right? Like, power revolves around them, right? And they should not be finding out things last, right? And everybody in America who's informed, who listens to the news and stays engaged with politics, knows today, before any official announcement has been made, that the world will change, right? And basically, there are a lot of people who are like, oh, I don't really like to engage with politics and religion. They're uninformed and they have less power, right? Knowledge, especially today, is power. And we are called to emulate that in our Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition Faerun world, right? And so your player characters, they're not going to be unengaged from politics and religion, and the reason why is they are seeking power. And if you are simulating our world, if you're trying to, create a view of our world in Dungeons and Dragons, then where you land, right, is your player characters are going to need to be informed, right? And if they're uninformed, you need to hit them because they lack power, right? And we need to deliver social cuts, right? Like, and you definitely want to teach your player characters. They need to know who rule. They need to know that Town Master Harbin Wester rules in Phandalin, and they need to know that L'Oreal Silverhand rules in Waterdeep. And if they are ignorant of those facts, they are definitely going to be passed by other adventuring groups who do know, and their villains are going to leverage their ignorance, right? And they're going to essentially punish it, and essentially this world 100% punishes ignorance, right? And not unfortunately, and if we're going to build a creative, solid state world which feels realistic to the player base we have, right? Who are the most charismatic, most confident, most intelligent, and frankly, the most courageous of all Dungeons & Dragons players out there, right? Then we need to be putting in front of them a world that's believable, a world that's relatable, right? And so basically, the biggest thing here that you want to remember is the way we found out about Stephen Breyer retiring, and it was reported across every major news source, right, was not Stephen Breyer saying, I'm going to retire, right? And the reason why this was reported is everybody know, like, the ramifications of Biden putting in a Supreme Court justice, he now has an opportunity that will rain decisions and life changes into American lives for quite possibly 30, 40, or 50 years. This is real power, right? And L'Oreal Silverhand and Harbin Wester have this same power in Phandalin and Waterdeep. And so one of the things you want to attach with your players, you want to attach to your player characters, is they know first, right? And if they don't have these connections so that they are getting information before other people and they're engaging with that information, then they need to be pushed back. They need to be shown the cost of ignorance in Faerun. And that's a great place to teach people the cost of ignorance, because unfortunately the cost of ignorance in this world is incredibly high, right? So if we're able to communicate that and make that a reality for our players, right, they're gonna start engaging with religion and politics more in the real world. And frankly, there's just no space for people who aren't engaging in religion and politics today at the power level, right? The powerless, absolutely. If you want to be powerless in this world, be disconnected from politics and religion, right? But if you want to be connected to power, you need to be very aware of everything that's happening at the cultural level in politics and religion, right? And then because they're incredibly intimately tied. And so it's a good idea to teach this lesson to our players in a game where the consequences are virtual rather than IRL, right? So that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you make sure that your player characters know that they're given the opportunity to know first and they're rewarded for their knowledge? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.